The security guard's hand moved to his radio the moment he saw Prince Andrew walking toward the king's private chambers. Something wasn't right. The hallway was empty except for the two of them, and the prince's face carried an expression the guard had never seen before. Urgent. Almost desperate. "Sir, I need to speak with him now," Andrew said, his voice sharp. The guard's name was Marcus Webb. He'd served in the Royal Protection Command for 12 years. He'd guarded prime ministers, foreign dignitaries, and members of the royal family through countless events. But he'd never been in a situation quite like this, Your Royal Highness. "His Majesty has requested no visitors this evening," Marcus replied. Keeping his voice steady and professional, Andrew took another step forward. His shoes echoed against the marble floor. The late afternoon sun cut through the tall windows, casting long shadows that made the corridor feel like a stage. Marcus could see tension in the prince's shoulders, the way his jaw was clenched tight. "You don't understand," Andrew said quietly. "This can't wait. Before we continue this story, if you're enjoying these real emotional moments from behind palace walls, hit that subscribe button. You won't believe where this goes next." Marcus had been briefed that morning. The king wasn't feeling well. He needed rest, silence, and absolutely no disturbances. The orders had come from the king's private secretary himself, delivered with unusual firmness. No exceptions. Not even family, but standing here now with Prince Andrew 5 feet away and closing the distance. Marcus felt the weight of an impossible choice pressing down on him. This wasn't just any visitor. This was the king's own brother. "I have my orders," Marcus said, shifting his position slightly to better block the doorway. His heart was beating faster now, though his face remained calm. Years of training had taught him to never show fear, never show doubt. Andrew stopped. For a moment, neither man moved. The silence between them felt heavy, thick with unspoken words and old family wounds that Marcus could only guess at. He'd heard the rumors, of course. Everyone had. The scandals, the interviews, the public shame. But those things didn't matter right now. What mattered was the door behind him and the man he was sworn to protect on the other side of it. "Move aside," Andrew said, and this time his voice carried an edge that made Marcus's instincts flare. This wasn't a request anymore. Marcus's training kicked in. He straightened his posture, squared his shoulders. His hand stayed near his radio, ready to call for backup if needed. But he also knew what calling for backup would mean: news crews, headlines, another royal scandal. The family had enough of those. "I cannot do that, Your Royal Highness," Marcus said firmly. Andrew's eyes narrowed. He took one more step forward, close enough now that Marcus could see the exhaustion in his face, the lines that seemed deeper than they should be. Close enough to see something else too. Was it anger? Desperation? Fear? "You don't know what's at stake here," Andrew whispered. "You have no idea what I need to tell him." Marcus didn't move. Behind that door, the king was resting. Behind that door was the man Marcus had taken an oath to protect, no matter what. Even from his own family, if necessary. The prince reached for the door handle, and that's when everything changed. Marcus moved without thinking. His body acted on pure instinct, years of training taking over. He stepped directly in front of the door, his arm extending to block Andrew's path. The prince's hand was inches from the brass handle when Marcus's voice cut through the silence. "Sir, please step back." For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Andrew's hand hung in the air between them. Marcus could hear his own breathing, could feel his pulse in his throat. This was the line. Once crossed, there was no going back. Andrew's face flushed red. "How dare you?" he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Do you know who I am? Do you know who you're speaking to?" "Yes, sir, I do." Marcus kept his arm extended, steady as stone. "And I know my duty." The prince's eyes flashed with something Marcus couldn't quite read. Hurt? Rage? Both. Andrew had once been a naval officer, a helicopter pilot, a man who'd served his country in war. But those days were long behind him now, and everyone knew it. The medals meant less when the headlines screamed louder. "Your duty," Andrew repeated, almost laughing. "Your duty is to serve the crown. I am part of that crown." "My duty is to protect His Majesty," Marcus replied. "And right now, That means following his wishes. He asked not to be disturbed. Andrew's hand dropped to his side. For a moment, Marcus thought the confrontation was over. The prince would turn around, walk away, and they'd both pretend this never happened. But then Andrew's expression changed. Something hardened in his eyes. "He's my brother," Andrew said quietly. "My own brother. And he won't even see me." "Do you know what that feels like?" The question caught Marcus off guard. This wasn't the entitled prince he'd expected. This was a man who looked broken, desperate. For the first time, Marcus saw past the scandal and the headlines to something raw underneath. "Sir," Marcus started, but Andrew cut him off. "No, you don't know. You can't know." Andrew's voice cracked slightly. "I've lost everything. My reputation, my titles, my place in this family, and now I'm losing him too." Marcus felt a flicker of sympathy, but he pushed it down. Sympathy wouldn't help either of them right now. "He had a job to do, Your Royal Highness. If you'd like to arrange a meeting through the proper channels, I'm sure the proper channels." Andrew laughed bitterly. "The proper channels won't even return my calls anymore. My own family treats me like I'm radioactive, like I'm something to be hidden away and forgotten." The corridor felt smaller now, the air thick with tension. Marcus could hear footsteps somewhere below, distant voices echoing up from the ground floor. If someone came up here and saw this confrontation, it would be everywhere by morning. His career would be over. Maybe worse. "I need you to step back, sir," Marcus said again, more firmly this time. Andrew took a step forward instead. They were close now, too close. Marcus could see the desperation in the prince's eyes, could smell the faint scent of cologne mixed with something sharper stress. Maybe fear. "Please," Andrew said, and the word came out like a confession. "I'm begging you. Just let me talk to him for 5 minutes. That's all I need." Marcus's jaw tightened. This was harder than any threat he'd ever faced. Harder than angry protesters or potential intruders. Because this was a man asking to see his own brother, and Marcus was the wall between them. "I can't do that," Marcus said softly. Andrew's face twisted. The desperation transformed into anger in an instant. He lunged for the door again, faster this time, trying to push past Marcus. And that's when Marcus made the decision that would change everything. He grabbed Andrew's arm firmly and pulled him back. "Back away." "Sir," Marcus said, his voice hard as iron now. The prince stumbled backward, shock written across his face. For a second, neither of them could believe what had just happened. A royal protection officer had just physically stopped a prince, touched him, pulled him back like he was any other person trying to force their way through a door. Andrew stared at Marcus's hand on his arm, then slowly raised his eyes to meet the guard's gaze. The look on his face was something Marcus would never forget, fury mixed with humiliation, mixed with something. It looked almost like relief, as if part of him was glad someone finally had the courage to tell him no. Marcus released Andrew's arm immediately, but the damage was done. They both knew it. There were protocols, unwritten rules, centuries of tradition about how one addressed royalty, how one touched royalty, and Marcus had just broken all of them. "Sir, I apologize for the physical contact," Marcus said, his voice steady, despite the adrenaline flooding his system. "But I cannot allow you to enter without authorization." Andrew rubbed his arm where Marcus had grabbed him. His face was pale now, the anger draining away to leave something emptier behind. He looked around the corridor as if seeing it for the first time, the paintings of his ancestors watching from the walls. The Persian carpet beneath their feet. The gilded fixtures that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. "You know what it's like," Andrew said slowly, "to stand in your own family's home and be treated like an intruder?" Marcus didn't answer. There was nothing he could say that would make this better. "I was born in this palace," Andrew continued, his voice distant. "I took my first steps in these halls. My mother used to call me her favorite, though she'd never admit it publicly. And now," he trailed off, looking at the door behind Marcus like it was a barrier to another world. "Now I can't even see my own brother without an appointment." The silence stretched between them. Marcus could hear a clock ticking somewhere, measuring out seconds that felt like hours. His radio crackled softly at his hip, but no voice came through. They were alone in this moment, guard and prince, duty and desperation. "Not the man they say I am," Andrew said suddenly, looking directly at Marcus. "I know what people think. I know what they say online, what they write in the papers. But I'm not that person." Marcus kept his expression neutral. He wasn't here to judge. He wasn't here to absolve or condemn. He was just here to guard a door. But Andrew seemed to need to talk, as if he'd been holding these words inside for too long and they were finally breaking free. "I made mistakes. I know that. I trusted the wrong people, made terrible decisions. But I never," his voice caught. "I never meant to hurt anyone. And now my whole life is defined by those mistakes. Everything I ever did, everything I ever was, it's all gone." I raced. Marcus shifted his weight slightly. His muscles were tense, ready to react if Andrew tried for the door again. But the prince wasn't moving. He was just standing there, looking smaller somehow than he had minutes ago. "My daughters won't return my calls," Andrew said quietly. "My ex-wife is the only person who still speaks to me, and even she has to be careful about being seen with me. I'm poison, Marcus. That's what I've become. Poison to my own family." The use of his first name surprised Marcus. It felt too personal, too intimate for this situation. But he didn't correct him. "And my brother," Andrew continued, gesturing weakly at the door. "He's in there and he's sick. I just want to tell him I'm sorry. That's all. I want to apologize for everything, for the embarrassment, for the scandal, for dragging our family's name through the mud. I want to tell him that I know I destroyed everything and I'm sorry." Marcus saw tears forming in Andrew's eyes. This was worse than anger, worse than entitlement. This was a broken man asking for something Marcus couldn't give him. "Sir," Marcus said carefully, "I understand this is difficult, but His Majesty was very clear about his wishes. Perhaps if you speak with his private secretary tomorrow might be too late." Andrew interrupted, his voice urgent again. "You don't understand. He's not just resting." He stopped abruptly, as if he'd said too much. Marcus's stomach tightened. "He's not just resting." What did that mean? "What do you mean, sir?" Andrew looked away, his jaw working. He seemed to be fighting with himself, deciding whether to say more. Finally he spoke, so quietly Marcus had to lean forward to hear. "He's dying, Marcus. My brother is dying, and he won't even let me say goodbye." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He'd known the king wasn't well. Everyone in the protection service knew that. But dying? That was different. That changed everything. Or did it? Marcus thought of his orders. Clear, direct, without exception. He thought of the oath he'd taken, the promises he'd made. He thought of his career, his family, who depended on his salary. His reputation built over 12 years of flawless service, and he thought of the man behind the door, who'd asked not to be disturbed. Even by his own brother. Especially by his own brother. "I'm sorry, sir," Marcus said, and he truly was. "But my orders stand." Andrew closed his eyes. When he opened them again, something in his face had changed. The desperation was still there, but now it was joined by a terrible resignation. "Then I suppose that's it," Andrew said. "This is how it ends. Not with forgiveness. Not with reconciliation. Just with a guard at a door, following orders?" He turned to walk away. Marcus felt relief flood through him. It was over. The crisis had passed, but then Andrew stopped, turned back, and said something that would haunt Marcus for years to come. "When you're lying on your deathbed one day," Andrew said, his voice hollow, "I hope there's no one standing between you and the people you need to see. The people you need to forgive you." The words struck deep. Marcus felt them settle in his chest, heavy and cold. Andrew walked 3 steps down the corridor before Marcus heard himself speak. "Wait," Andrew stopped, but didn't turn around. Marcus's mind was racing. Every rule he'd ever learned screamed at him to let the prince go, to stay at his post, to follow his orders. But something else was pulling at him. Something human and messy and impossible to ignore. "Sir," Marcus said slowly, "I need to verify something. Please wait here for just one moment." Andrew turned, confusion and hope warring on his face. Marcus pulled out his radio, his hand trembling slightly. He was about to break protocol in a way that could end his career, but he had to know the truth. He keyed the radio. Web 2 control. I need to speak with the king's private secretary. Urgent matter. Static crackled. Then a woman's voice came through. Stand by, Webb. Andrew watched him, not moving, barely breathing. The seconds stretched out like years. Marcus kept his eyes on the prince, watching for any sudden movement toward the door. Trust but verify, that was the rule. The radio crackled again. Webb, this is Secretary Pembroke. What's the situation? Marcus chose his words carefully. Sir, I have a request for audience with His Majesty. Family matter. Given the circumstances, I wanted to verify the standing orders. There was a long pause. Marcus could imagine Pembroke in his office, deciding what to say, how much to reveal. The orders stand. Webb, no visitors. No exceptions. Is that clear? Marcus glanced at Andrew, whose face had fallen. Sir, if I may ask, is His Majesty's condition as serious as I've been led to believe? Another pause, longer this time. When Pembroke spoke again, his voice was different, softer, tired. His Majesty is very ill, Webb. The family has been informed. But His Majesty's wishes regarding visitors remain unchanged. He's been quite clear about that, particularly regarding certain family members. The words hung in the air. Particularly regarding certain family members. Marcus didn't need to ask who Pembroke meant. Understood, sir. Thank you. Marcus clipped the radio back to his belt. Andrew had heard enough. The hope that had flickered in his eyes was gone now, replaced by a kind of numb acceptance. He nodded slowly, as if confirming something he'd always known. So he really doesn't want to see me, Andrew said. It wasn't a question. Even now. Even at the end. I'm still not forgiven. Marcus wanted to say something comforting, but what could he say? The truth was the truth, and it was brutal. I need to tell you something, Andrew said, moving closer again, but not threateningly this time. Something nobody else knows. About why I need to see him so badly. Marcus instinctively stepped back toward the door, protective instinct kicking in. But Andrew held up his hands. I'm not going to try anything. I need to tell someone. And maybe it should be you. Maybe you deserve to know why you're standing between us. Marcus didn't want to know. Didn't want to be part of whatever family drama or secret confession this was. But Andrew was already talking, the words spilling out like he couldn't stop them. When we were boys, maybe 8 and 6 years old, we used to play hide and seek in the palace. One day I got lost, really lost in the old wing. I was terrified, crying in the dark, and my brother found me. He took my hand and led me back to our mother. He told me, I'll always find you. That's what brothers do, Andrew's voice cracked. I've been lost ever since this scandal broke. Lost in the dark again, just like when I was 6. And I thought maybe he'd find me again. That's what brothers do, he said. But he didn't. He let me stay lost. Marcus felt his throat tighten. This wasn't the entitled prince he'd expected. This was a man drowning in regret, reaching for a lifeline that wasn't there. 2 weeks ago, Andrew continued, I wrote him a letter. Told him everything about the mistakes, about the shame I've brought on our family, about how sorry I am. I poured my heart into that letter. 20 pages. I sent it through his secretary. He paused, swallowing hard. It came back yesterday, unopened. Not even opened, Marcus. He wouldn't even read my apology. Marcus looked at the door behind him. Inside, a dying king who wouldn't see his brother, who wouldn't even read his letter. It seemed cruel, but who was Marcus to judge? He didn't know what had passed between them, what wounds ran too deep to heal. I'm sorry, sir, Marcus said, and meant it. But I can't. A sound from inside the room stopped him. Cough. Then another, harsher, followed by the unmistakable sound of someone in distress. Marcus's training took over. He pulled out his radio instantly. Medical emergency in the king's chambers? Need immediate assistance? He reached for the door handle, but Andrew was faster. Before Marcus could react, the prince grabbed the handle first, And this time, Marcus didn't stop him. The door swung open. Andrew rushed in with Marcus right behind him, duty and emergency overriding everything else. The king's private chamber was dimly lit, curtains drawn against the afternoon sun. The air smelled of medicine and something else, the particular stillness of sick rooms. The king was in bed. Propped up by pillows, his face pale and drawn. He was coughing violently, one hand clutched to his chest, the other reaching for a glass of water on the nightstand that was just out of reach. Andrew was at his brother's side in 3 strides. He grabbed the water, helped lift the glass to the king's lips. The coughing subsided slowly. Marcus stood frozen in the doorway, radio in hand, watching 2 brothers in a moment so private he felt like an intruder. The king's eyes focused, moving from Andrew to Marcus and back again. When he spoke, his voice was weak, but sharp. "What is he doing here?" The king looked at Marcus with an expression of betrayal. "I gave explicit orders." "Your Majesty, I heard you in distress," Marcus said quickly. "I thought you thought wrong." The king tried to sit up straighter, wincing with pain. "Andrew, you need to leave now." But Andrew didn't move. He set the water glass down and stayed where he was, kneeling beside the bed like a child seeking forgiveness. His eyes were wet with tears. "Please," Andrew said. "Just listen to me for 1 minute." "That's all I'm asking." I said, "Leave." The king's voice was harder now, despite its weakness. "Marcus, remove him." Marcus took a step forward, his duty clear. But his feet felt like lead. He'd spent 12 years following orders without question. 12 years being the perfect soldier. But standing here now, watching a dying man refuse to see his own brother, something inside him rebelled. "Your Majesty," Marcus said carefully, "perhaps it would be better if— Are you questioning my orders, Webb?" The king's eyes flashed with anger, and in that moment Marcus saw the monarch beneath the sick man. I said, "Remove him." "That's not a request." Andrew stood slowly, defeat written across his face. "I'm going," he said quietly. "But I need you to know something first. I need you to know that I'm sorry. For everything. For the shame I brought to our family. For the pain I caused Mother before she died. For making your life harder when you were already carrying so much." The king looked away, his jaw tight. "Your apologies mean nothing to me." "I know," Andrew said, his voice breaking. "I know they don't. But I'm saying them anyway, because they're true. I destroyed everything: my marriage, my reputation, my place in this family. I know that. But you're my brother. You're my blood. And I need you to know that I never stopped loving you, even when you stopped loving me." "I never stopped loving you," the king said. So quietly Marcus almost missed it. "That's the problem. That's always been the problem." Andrew froze. Marcus felt the air in the room shift, charged with something fragile and dangerous. "You don't understand," the king continued, turning to look at his brother with eyes full of pain. "You think I'm angry at you for the scandal? For the embarrassment? But that's not it. I'm angry because you're my little brother and I couldn't protect you. I couldn't save you from yourself." Tears were streaming down Andrew's face now. "You're not supposed to save me. I'm supposed to take care of myself, but you didn't." The king's voice was barely a whisper. "And I watched you fall apart. I watched you make terrible choices. I watched you hurt people, and I couldn't stop it. I'm the king. I'm supposed to have power. But I had no power over this. No power to help you." The words hung between them like a confession. Marcus realized he was witnessing something profound, something that had been buried beneath protocol and scandal and years of silence. "So I pushed you away," the king said. "I thought if I cut you off, if I made you face the consequences alone, maybe you'd finally change. Maybe you'd finally become the man I know you can be. But instead," he gestured weakly at himself, "instead, I'm dying and we're here, and nothing is fixed. Nothing is better." Andrew dropped back to his knees beside the bed. He took his brother's hand, and this time the king didn't pull away. "I can't fix what I've done," Andrew said. "I can't undo the past. But I can promise you that I'll spend whatever time I have left trying to be better, trying to be the brother you deserved, even if you're not here to see it." The king closed his eyes. A single tear ran down his cheek. "You foolish boy," he whispered. "You stubborn, foolish boy. Just like when we were children. I know. You always made things harder than they needed to be. I know." The king squeezed Andrew's hand. "I read your letter," he said quietly. "All 20 pages. 3 times. Andrew's head snapped up, confusion in his eyes. But it came back unopened. By Pembroke send it back. I wanted you to think I hadn't read it. I wanted to hurt you the way you'd hurt me." The king opened his eyes. "But I read every word. And I've been lying here for 2 weeks, too proud to admit that maybe I was wrong. Maybe pushing you away wasn't the answer." Marcus watched as Andrew began to cry in earnest now, his shoulders shaking with sobs he'd clearly been holding back for years. The king pulled his brother closer. They held each other like that 2 old men who'd carried crowns and scandals and secrets. It's too heavy for any one person to bear alone. Marcus took a quiet step backward toward the door. This was a moment for family, not for guards. His hand was on the door handle when the king's voice stopped him. "Webb, stay." Marcus turned back, surprised. The king was looking at him now with an expression that was hard to read, not anger anymore, but something else. Respect, maybe. Or understanding. "You did good work today," the king said. "You followed your orders. You protected me, even from my own family. That takes courage." "Your Majesty," Marcus started, but the king raised a hand. "No, and then you broke your orders. You let him in. That takes a different kind of courage." The king's eyes moved between Marcus and Andrew. "I was wrong to push my brother away. Wrong to think that punishment was the same as protection. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is let people we love face their mistakes, but not face them alone." Andrew wiped his eyes, looking at his brother with something like wonder. "I don't deserve your forgiveness." "Probably not," the king agreed, a weak smile crossing his face. "But you're going to get it anyway. Because I'm tired, Andrew. I'm so tired of being angry. I'm tired of carrying this weight. And I don't want to die with things like this between us." "You're not going to die," Andrew said quickly, desperately. The doctors say a lot of things, but we both know the truth." The king squeezed his brother's hand again. "I have weeks, maybe a month, and I want to spend that time with family, with my brother, even if he is a foolish, stubborn disaster." Andrew laughed through his tears. "That's fair." They sat in silence for a moment, just holding hands, breathing in the same space. Marcus felt privileged to witness it, this small moment of grace in the midst of so much pain. "Marcus," the king said, turning his attention to the guard again. "You'll need to report this, I assume. That Prince Andrew entered my chambers against orders. That you allowed it to happen?" Marcus's stomach dropped. He'd been so focused on the emotional weight of the moment that he'd forgotten about the consequences waiting for him outside this room. His career was over. He'd broken protocol, disobeyed direct orders, allowed a security breach. It didn't matter that everything had turned out okay. The rules were the rules. "Yes, Your Majesty," Marcus said quietly. "I'll file a full report." "No," the king said. "You won't." Marcus blinked in confusion. "Sir, what happened here today doesn't leave this room. As far as anyone is concerned, I changed my mind and requested Prince Andrew's presence. Do you understand?" Relief flooded through Marcus, but he kept his face neutral. "Your Majesty, I can't ask you to. You're not asking. I'm telling." The king's voice carried the weight of authority despite its weakness. "You did what you thought was right in an impossible situation. That's exactly the kind of judgment I want in the men who protect me. If anything, you deserve a commendation, not a reprimand." "Thank you, sir," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. The king turned back to Andrew. "Now then, little brother, tell me about your daughters. How are they?" Andrew's face lit up the way it hadn't since he'd entered the corridor. "They're wonderful. Beatrice just had another baby, your niece. And Eugenie is doing amazing work with her charity. They're both so much stronger than I ever was. They get that from their mother," the king said with a slight smile. "Sarah always had more sense than you. Don't I know it?" Marcus stood by the door, listening to the 2 brothers talk about family, about memories, about the small, ordinary things that matter when time is short. He thought about his own family, his wife, his 2 kids, and made a mental note to call them after his shift. Life was too short for unresolved conflicts, too short for pride and stubbornness. After about 20 minutes, the king's eyes began to close. The medication and the emotional weight of the conversation were taking their toll. Andrew noticed and stood carefully. "I should let you rest," he said. "Come back tomorrow," the king murmured. "In the morning, we'll have breakfast, like we used to when we were boys." Andrew's face broke into a genuine smile, the first Marcus had seen from him. "I'd like that." As they left the room, Marcus gently closing the door behind them, Andrew turned to face him in the corridor. The desperate, broken man from an hour ago was gone. In his place was someone who looked lighter somehow, as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. "Thank you," Andrew said simply, "for doing your job, and then for not doing your job." "I know that doesn't make sense, but it makes perfect sense, sir," Marcus replied. Andrew held out his hand. Marcus shook it, this time without any breach of protocol. Just 2 men acknowledging what they'd been through together. "I hope," Andrew said as he turned to leave, "that if you ever need someone to stand up for you the way you stood up for me today, there's someone brave enough to do it." Marcus watched the prince walk down the corridor, his footsteps echoing off the marble floors. The late afternoon sun was lower now, painting everything in shades of gold and amber. In a few hours, Marcus's shift would end. He'd go home to his family. He'd eat dinner and help his kids with their homework, and probably not mention anything about the most extraordinary day of his career, but he'd remember this moment for the rest of his life. The day he learned that sometimes protecting someone means keeping them safe from danger, and sometimes it means giving them the chance to heal. 3 weeks later, Marcus stood in the same corridor, this time as part of an honor guard. The king had passed away peacefully in his sleep, his brother at his bedside. The funeral would be watched by millions around the world. But Marcus knew something those millions didn't. He knew that in the end, there had been forgiveness. There had been grace. 2 brothers had found their way back to each other in the time they had left, and a guard who'd been brave enough to follow his orders, then brave enough to break them, had made it possible. That knowledge, more than any medal or commendation, was enough.